pushing me around, but I'll stand my ground, and I won't back down.
Hi everyone, Jim Rizoli here. Today I am in Toronto with Paul Fromm. He represents the group called CAFE, the Canadian Association for Freedom of Expression. And Paul, I must admit, he has quite a group going here that I've been just, kind of like, experiencing in the last couple of days of people that, have the same type of viewpoints that we do in regards to what's going on in the world today, especially his end of the woods in Canada, on free speech. Today I thought we would talk about, we were discussing maybe a little bit about Ernst Zundel and Ingrid and their contribution to the cause, as they say. And Paul, maybe you can start giving your viewpoints towards them. Go ahead.
Yes, well, now that both their lives are over, both Ernst passed away this August, and Ingrid passed away on October 12th. I think we're in a position to begin to appreciate and assess their tremendous contribution. And anything we're going to say this today is going to be just preliminary, just once over lightly. But I'm looking at it more from the free speech point of view. And both of them contributed mightily. Ernst started off as a revisionist publisher here in Canada with his Samizdat press. He's perhaps best known, and this is what brought him to the attention of law enforcement, for reproducing a tract called Did 6 Million Really Die? And mass-produced them and sent them everywhere, and that caused a huge stir. And that was typical of what Ernst was not a researcher, and he was not really a writer. He was a publicist. Mm-hmm. He took the works of other people and packaged them, or in many cases reproduced them, and got them out to a wider audience. And he was also one of the first to get into videos. He was producing videos back in the mid-90s in his place. So he was a real communications hub. And so I think he will be remembered as the man who publicized some of the really important revisionist writers. He got revisionism out to a much wider audience. And of course, along the way, and I don't think he started off intending to do this, got involved in some very important free speech battles. The organized Jewish lobby in those days, particularly the Holocaust Remembrance Society, headed up by a really nasty piece of work who claimed she'd been in Auschwitz. There's so many survivors, but anyway, that's an nasty.
What was her name? Citron, was
that?
Yeah,
yeah, Sabina Citron.
Okay.
She was owned some sort of manufacturing factory, a company, and they were constantly up before the Labor Relations Board. They treated their workers shoddily. So anyway, she was at one point his major nemesis, and eventually this led to charges under Canada's False News Act. And Ernst was convicted once, appealed, got a new trial. That was he's convicted in '84, new trial in '88, convicted again all the way up to the Supreme Court, and in 1992 the law was ruled unconstitutional, and so the charges were thrown out. But Ernst's contribution there was to fight this evil law. I mean, the whole point was they were trying to get him. And that's part of the grim reality about being a dissident. It's not enough to say you're wrong or your ideas are out to lunch. They have to destroy you, and part of the way of destroying him was to get him sent to jail. Well, in the end, that didn't work, but he garnered the resources to fight this, and that fight probably cost more than $1 million, and that's back in the 80s.
Wow.
So that was a big contribution. He also, just prior to that, had his mailing rights taken away arbitrarily by the minister in charge of the post office, the postmaster general. He fought back and got them back. and we are not aware of that being done it was done to one other person who didn't fight, but that wasn't done again until 2016, when again under Jewish pressure and pressure from people like Richard Warman, who I think would like to police all thought in Canada, the then postmaster, or the minister in charge of the post office, took away the mailing rights of the publisher and editor of Your War News, which is a very satirical newspaper that mocks the LGBTQ agenda, mocks our lesbian premier,
The alphabet people.
mocks the so-called Holocaust, mocks radical Islam. I mean, it's just a wild out to lunch paper. But the fight Ernst waged was very important. Then of course technology changed or improved, and we had the internet. And so by the mid-90s, there was something called the Zundel site. And we could argue about the legal technicalities all afternoon, because we certainly were through that for days and days of hearings. But the Zundel site wasn't actually run by Ernst Zundel. It was run by an American named Ingrid Zundel.
Now, was that before he was married?
It started before he was married.
Okay, yeah. Okay, good point. Yeah.
So it was not. Let's see. We went to a Human Rights Commission in '97, so it probably started up around '95.
Okay.
And it put out a lot of good revisionist material, a lot of it produced by Ernst, and then the Zundel site was taken to the Canadian Human Rights Commission under what was called Section 13, which made it an offence to repeatedly communicate telephonically material that was likely to expose to hatred or contempt one of the privileged groups. Well, that battle went from '97 to 2002. In the end, we lost, but it was hard fought, and there's lots of complexities which I guess we won't get into today. But Ernst funded this, and we had 54 days of hearings. Of course, not all consecutive.
Right.
Every time we lost, we went to the federal court, and sometimes if we lost there, we went to the Court of Appeals, and we actually occasionally won. These would be points along the way. So it was an immensely expensive battle, and in those days, you had to pay for a transcript. Ernst spent tens of thousands of dollars on transcripts of the hearings. The costs were ferocious. So he funded some really good free speech battles. Won some, lost some. So I think that's a big contribution that he made. Another contribution that I don't think that many people know about is that he found a woman named Savitri Devi. Now, Savitri Devi has become almost a cult figure among people, among National Socialists. Right. And she was a very interesting person. She was a part French, part Greek. I'm sorry, I think so. Anyway, she grew up in France, ended up marrying a high caste Indian, moved to India, hence her name, Savitri Devi, and was a passionate admirer of Hitler and National Socialism. She was personally just devastated when the National Socialists lost the war. She wrote a number of very inspirational, mystical books like the Lightning and the Sun and so on. By the time Ernst came upon her in the 70s, she was desperately poor and in very bad health, and he, I think, basically helped support her until she died, and recorded a great number of recordings with her, audio tapes, some of which have been turned into books. So there was another contribution.
See, I was just reading about her the other day, but are these audios somewhere we can find them, or what?
I don't know where they are, but I think the person to contact, or one of them, would be Greg Johnson. because he's a real fan. Yeah, I don't think these are gone out to the dumpster.
Right.
So those are, from the free speech point of view, major contributions. Ernst paid a terrible price for his beliefs. Well, I must say that Ernst, as a young German immigrant to Canada, he'd only been here for 9 years, he was not yet a citizen. In 1968, ran for the leadership of the Liberal Party, and actually made a speech to the convention. And now, of course, he didn't have a hope in hell of winning. That was the one by socialist admirer of Mao, admirer of Castro, Pierre Trudeau, the father of the current trust fund kid. But nonetheless, Ernst addressed a large audience, and he talked, even there in 1968, about the need of fairness for the German people, that the German people were being unfairly beaten up on. And that's only 23 years after the war. And that was what became, I would think, the major motivator for Ernst's work. And before he even got into the questioning the so-called Holocaust, he formed a group of concerned parents of German descent to try to help in the schools, where after the Holocaust series came out, some, I have to say, ignorant teachers would say, the Germans, exterminated the Germans. Well, how would 7-year-old little Hans or Heidi feel when all the eyes are turned on them, that they or their parents personally went out and murdered people? So that was an important thing in the back of Ernst's mind, a justice for the German people, and he fought tenaciously for that all his life. When I say he suffered very severely, first of all, he was a very successful commercial artist, retouching. He did all sorts of catalogs for some of the big companies in Canada back there in the 60s and 70s. Once his trials began, he lost almost all the business. So, I mean, that was a big hit.
Yeah.
Then, of course, his home was firebombed in 1995 by, Irv
Rubin, was it?
Irv Rubin claimed responsibility. He told the person I know at a gun show in Montana, he didn't know who she was. He boasted, we burned down Ernst Zundel's home. She didn't even know who Ernst Zundel was. So, I mean, I believe the story. Actually, Rubin was found with another Jewish Defense League person wandering through the wreckage of the home a couple of days later. So, anyway, he suffered that. There were several bombs that were sent to him over the years.
Of course, Irv Rubin got his just desserts, right?
Irv Rubin, yes, allegedly committed suicide in San Quentin.
That's what they say.
Yes.
He slipped on a banana.
As the bagel turns. So Ernst suffered that way. Then he was, I think, a courageous miscarriage of justice, deported from the United States and banned for 20 years. That was in 2003. He was sent back to Canada, which was his place of last residence, and again strings were pulled, and it was decided that he would be was a threat to national security. He was kept in solitary confinement at the West Toronto Detention Centre under terrible conditions, denied dental care for quite a while, and in the end was deported to Germany, who welcomed him with open arms for 5 years in jail for having the wrong views of World War II. Yeah. And geez, my parents fought thinking they were going to bring democracy to Germany.
He said he was actually treated better in Germany than he was in Canada.
Yes, he had I think people could bring him food. We couldn't bring him anything in Canada. No, but I mean, he's still.
I know, yeah.
So he was separated from his wife for 7 years. Ingrid, along the way, he married the second person we'll talk about briefly, Ingrid Rimland. They worked very closely, and they'd set up an art gallery in their place in Pigeon Forge.
Have you ever been down there? I
have never actually visited the place. Yeah. I mean, I've been around Pigeon Forge, but I never actually got there.
And you met Ingrid, though?
Oh, yeah, I knew her, yeah.
All right, so they set up their art gallery and actually supposed to be like a retreat center.
It's a retreat center, and they have they've received books over the years from various people who passed on. They have a tremendous library. They also have a tremendous collection of documents from his numerous trials. I was involved with only a tiny part of the court records, but I shipped 14 like hampers, and that's only one tiny aspect of one trial. So there is a treasure trove, and I'm sure there's correspondence with all sorts of interesting people over 50, 60 years. So he and she worked very closely, and the ironic thing was that when he moved to the States in 2000, he was actually trying to transition from being the revisionist publisher in North America into more his first calling, which was art, and he had several other interests as well. So he was actually retired by the time the vengeful forces got after him. So so from 2003 until 2010, he was in jail, first in Canada, then in the U.S. When he got out in Germany in 2010, Ingrid could not visit him. She was afraid of being hit with exactly the same type of law that because of her work on the Zundel site. So for the rest of their life, and he couldn't go to the States, so for the rest of their lives, they had to meet in third countries like Mexico or Costa Rica. So this was a huge price to pay, to be in their sunset years, being denied each other's full-time company, denied the ability to enjoy the retreat they had. So that was a huge price, and I think that ought to be honored. And then when we look at Ingrid, Ingrid was the ultimate success story, from rags to improved condition. She was born in what's now the Ukraine, into a German Mennonite family. They were ethnically cleansed at the end of the Second World War. She fled west to Germany, ended up in a Mennonite colony in Paraguay, which is very, very backward. When her son had, I think he had certain handicaps, she set out knowing almost no English for the United States, which actually ended up in St. Catharines, Canada, where there's a number of Mennonites. And she, through force of will, learned English. She was very bright, came to the attention of a professor, and she earned her doctorate and became a doctor of education. Was doing quite well, and then she met Ernst Zundel. She was writing books. Some of them were fiction about what happened in the Second World War, the German expellees. There's a three-part series, a three-volume series called Lebensraum. She wrote several other books, and then she got involved with Ernst, and they worked very closely together. First with the Zundel site, and then she's been was a tremendous support, putting out her power newsletter, keeping people informed, and she did all this in the last since 2003, last 14 years, without his permanent companionship. So she was a extremely loyal person, and fought fiercely for him. Spent a king's ransom on lawyers' fees in the United States and Germany, trying to reverse this deportation order. And I think a number of things. There were a number of very harsh blows that occurred this year. One was finding out a few months before Ernst died that a Jew on at Homeland Security had written that Zundel will never come back to Germany, to the United States. He was under a 20-year ban, which would have run out I think in 2023. So that was forever. He wouldn't get back to Germany. She couldn't, sorry, get back to the United States. He couldn't go to Germany.
She could.
I'm sorry, she couldn't, yeah. He's in Germany. He won't ever be able to go back to their home. She can't come to Germany. And you know, it was all very sad. And this is from you know, countries, Canada and the United States and Germany to some extent, that talk about how much they're for inclusion and diversity, well, not inclusion of dissident ideas or diverse opinions. And we wear our humanitarianism on our lapels, but not very humane, keeping an old couple apart.
Right.
So he passed away in August, and she didn't survive him by more than actually by less than 3 months. And one of the ironies is she had just bought an apartment for them in Cancun, where I think they decided, well, if they couldn't be together in
Right.
Tennessee, they would be in Mexico. And then he died, and I think that, I mean, I'm no expert on what happened to her, but we're certainly not told much. But I'm sure that pretty much robbed her of her.
Now you're going to have some sort of thing coming up about her, right? About them, a memorial? Or?
Yes, we're going to have a memorial. In fact, this seems to be turned into an active subcommittee with Cafe. This will be the 3rd memorial this year. Not a pleasant task. A great free speech lawyer, Barbara Kalashka, died in June. We had a very controversial memorial for her in July, which the forces of evil tried to shut down, but failed. Then we had a memorial for Ernst in August, and in early December we'll have one for Ingrid.
Now, are you going to have that in a public building again, or you don't have to tell me exactly where it's going to be, but you think you're going to have issues on that, or what?
Well, we have our ongoing issues with the Toronto Public Library. I don't think that will be the next move in the game.
Right.
We've already got a place located,
Right.
but we'll video it, and I hope there'll be some moving remembrances as there were at the Zundel Memorial.
Right. Well, I hope they can retrieve all the things from that home, all the books and videos and all the things he had there, because I heard a tremendous amount of information there.
Yeah, and it should be preserved. I don't want to tell tales out of school, but yes, that is on the minds of a number of people, some of whom are taking action to try to see that happens. And if I may just kind of conclude with this, and it is quite sad. Ernst was buried very quickly in Germany. His family are divided. People who desperately did not like what he did, others who were tolerant or supportive. No political followers were invited. They got him shoveled into the ground so fast, and it appears the same thing has happened with Ingrid. None of her political friends were invited. We believe she was buried. The only notice that came out was that Ingrid Runland has passed away on October 12th. Her work is finished, and something in deference to the privacy of the family. That's all.
Have you ever met her son?
No, I haven't. She had 2.
Right, but one died.
No,
right?
I never met either.
So that son, I don't know anything about him. I would think he's probably in the 60s. Late 50s.
50s or 60s, yeah.
Well, I hope he, I hope he has a good heart condition to preserve what she had. Because some of these guys can just dump it and not care about anybody.
That's the big concern. But I'm on the case, and,
Okay.
and I do understand that there are going to be efforts to do the right thing, whatever that is, to preserve these things.
Well, I like to find out what's going to happen to the retreat. You know,
Yeah.
that would be good if we could get into, you know, somebody's hands that could continue on.
Yes.
You know, but I'm sure that, you know, someone else is taking care of it. Yeah, it's very sad. You know, Ernest to me was in a sense a mentor for me, because he was my first exposure, you know, to the Holocaust topic anyway. And you know, if it wasn't for him, I don't know. I don't think I'd be where I am now. You know, because the Zundel site is where I went to learn most of my information, because that was the only site at the time. I don't think there was much going on with anybody at the time with Holocaust revisionism, right? Except maybe IHR. I don't know.
If put in a final thought, Ernst felt what I think we're beginning to feel, and that is the generations move on. Ernst was once when he started off in the 70s. He was a relatively young man, helping his generation and the slightly older generation. Well, all of those people who fought World War II are dead. And then his generation, which were born just before the war, well, they're moving on. And I think he saw that and had made plans. He was passing on the revisionist mantle to Germar Rudolph.
Right.
And as you say, when you became interested, the only place to go was the Zundel
Right.
site, or maybe the IHR. Well, now, with the type of videos you're doing, and Brian Rue and David Duke and many others,
Right.
there's now a wealth of information.
Yeah.
So I think there are people carrying on that legacy then with a new technology in their own way. And
Right.
so I hope you know, that Ernst can look down and see that while he's suffered many setbacks, his work continues and continues to expand.
Right, right. Well, that, you know, pretty much sums it up for that topic of Ernst and Ingrid. And again, Paul mentioned that there's going to be a memorial in December, he said?
December. Yeah.
In December. And hopefully there'll be a good attendance to that. I want to thank you for watching. I'm Jim Rizoli, this is Paul Fromm. We are in Toronto today, and we will talk to you another time. Bye now.
In a world that keeps on pushing me around.